My name is Evelyn Carter, and the day my husband asked me for a divorce was the day he unknowingly destroyed his own life. We were sitting in our luxury apartment in Seattle, the city lights glowing behind him like a perfect picture of success. Ironically, that success was built on my silent sacrifices. He didn't even look nervous. "I think we've grown apart," Daniel said casually, scrolling through his phone as if he were ordering dinner, not ending a marriage. Grown apart. That's what he called it. 7 years of love, loyalty, and standing beside him when he had nothing, reduced to 2 cold words. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because something inside me had already started breaking long before this moment. "You deserve someone more on your level," he added, finally looking at me. That line almost made me laugh. Because if he only knew who I really was. You see, Daniel thought he built his empire from scratch. He believed every deal, every investor, every opportunity came from his intelligence and charm. He never questioned why doors opened so easily. He never wondered why powerful people trusted him so quickly. And he definitely never imagined that the quiet, simple woman he married was the one pulling the strings from the shadows. I kept my identity hidden for a reason. Because I wanted someone to love me, not my name, not my wealth, not my family's legacy. And for a while I believed Daniel was that man. I was wrong. "You'll be fine," he continued, standing up. "I'll make sure you're taken care of." Taken care of. Like I was some charity case. Like I hadn't been the one taking care of him all along. I slowly stood up, my heart pounding, but my face calm. "Is there someone else?" I asked. He hesitated for just a second. That was all I needed. "There is," he admitted. "But that's not the point. Not the point."
Of course it wasn't to him. But to me,
it was everything. Because it meant this wasn't just about growing apart. It was betrayal. And suddenly, everything became clear. All the late nights, the business trips, the sudden change in how he looked at me, like I was no longer enough. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept it. "Okay," I said softly. No arguments. No drama. No tears. That confused him. "Okay," he repeated. "Yes," I replied, meeting his eyes. "If that's what you want." He looked almost relieved. And that was the moment something inside me shifted completely. Because while he thought he was walking away from me, I realized he had just handed me the perfect reason to stop protecting him. "Let me ask you something. If you were in my position, after giving someone everything, only to be replaced like you meant nothing, would you walk away quietly? Or would you make sure they felt what they lost?" Daniel walked past me, already texting someone, probably her. He didn't notice the way my expression changed. He didn't notice the silence in the room getting heavier. And he definitely didn't notice that the woman he just divorced was the hidden owner of the investment firm that funded his entire company. I picked up my phone after he left. One call. That's all it would take. One call to unravel everything he thought he owned.
But I didn't rush. No.
Because real revenge isn't loud. It's patient, precise, and unforgettable. I walked to the window, staring at the Seattle skyline, the same city where I chose to live as someone ordinary, and the same city where Daniel was about to learn who I really was. And when he does, he won't just regret losing me. He'll regret ever underestimating me. And the next morning, I made my first move. He still had no idea what was coming. I woke up before sunrise, the city of Seattle still quiet, almost peaceful, like it didn't know a storm was about to hit. I stood in front of the mirror for a long moment. No makeup, no designer clothes, just the same simple Evelyn Carter that Daniel thought he had outgrown. A small smile crossed my lips. "Let's fix that," I whispered to myself. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. It rang once. "Miss Carter." A calm, respectful voice answered immediately. "It's been a while." "Good morning, Michael," I said, my tone steady. "I need a full report on Anderson Tech." There was a brief pause on the other end. Not confusion, just recognition. He understood exactly what that meant. "Everything?" he asked carefully. "Everything," I replied. Financials, investors, vulnerabilities, and I want it on my desk in 2 hours. Yes, ma'am. The call ended, and just like that, the game had begun. 2 hours later, I walked into a private office building downtown, one Daniel had never seen, never even heard of. Because to him, this place didn't exist. But to the business world, this building was power. As I stepped inside, the receptionist immediately stood up. Good morning, Miss Carter. No hesitation. No doubt. This was the real world. The one Daniel was never meant to see. I walked straight into the executive conference room, where a group of sharply dressed men and women were already waiting. Michael stood at the head of the table. Everyone, Miss Carter is here. They all stood up. Respect. Authority. Control. Everything Daniel thought he had was actually mine. Sit, I said calmly, taking my place. Michael slid a thick file across the table. Here's the situation, he began. Anderson Tech is performing well on the surface. Revenue is up. Public image is strong. But, I interrupted. He gave a slight nod. But, 78% of their expansion capital comes from shell investments. I leaned back slightly. Which we control, I said. Yes. A quiet silence filled the room. Not shock. Not fear. Just anticipation. Meaning, Michael continued, if we pull funding, the company collapses within 60 days. Maximum. 60 days. That's all it would take to erase everything Daniel believed he built. I tapped my fingers lightly on the table, thinking. Not yet, I said. Michael looked up. You don't want to proceed? Oh, I do, I replied, a faint smile forming. But not like this. Because destruction alone? That's not revenge. That's mercy. And Daniel didn't deserve mercy. I want him to feel it, I continued, slowly. To watch everything slip through his fingers and not understand why. A few people exchanged glances, not because they disagreed, but because they knew this was going to be ruthless. Start with the smaller investors, I instructed. Quietly pull out. Make it look natural. And the major contracts? Michael asked. Delay them. Complicate them. Make every deal harder than the last. I stood up, walking toward the window. From here, the entire city stretched out beneath me. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably smiling, thinking he just upgraded his life. Let him think he's winning, I said softly. For now. Later that afternoon, I did something unexpected. I went back to the apartment. Not because I missed it, but because I needed to see something for myself. As I opened the door, I immediately noticed the difference. There was a new perfume in the air. Sweet. Unfamiliar. I stepped inside slowly and then I saw it. A woman's heels by the door. So soon. I let out a quiet breath. Of course. Why wait when he thought I was already out of the picture? Voices echoed softly from the living room. Daniel's voice. And hers. I walked closer, my steps silent. She wasn't really my type anyway, Daniel was saying. I stopped. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything. I just needed someone supportive back then, he continued, almost laughing. Now things are different. Supportive. That's what he reduced me to. I turned away before they could see me. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just done. Completely done. That night, I sat alone in my new penthouse, one Daniel didn't know existed. A glass of wine in my hand, the city lights reflecting in the window. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. Phase 1 has started. I smiled slightly. Good. Everything was moving exactly as planned. But this was just the beginning. Because Daniel still thought he made the first move. He still believed he was in control. And that illusion was about to become his biggest mistake. The next day, Daniel called me. And for the first time since the divorce, there was something different in his voice. Concern. I could hear it clearly in Daniel's voice. Not panic, not yet. But something had shifted. Evelyn, he said, trying to sound casual. Hey? I was just checking in. Checking in. I almost smiled. He had never checked in before. Not when I stayed up all night waiting for him. Not when I slowly disappeared from his world.
But now?
Now he was calling. Is everything okay? I asked calmly, as if nothing had changed. There was a brief pause. Yeah, of course, he replied quickly. Just business has been a little weird lately.
Weird.
That was one way to describe it. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I said softly. Another pause. Longer this time. I was actually hoping we could meet, he added. Maybe grab coffee or something. Coffee. After ending our marriage like a business deal, now he wanted coffee. Interesting. I walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, overlooking Seattle, watching the morning traffic move like nothing in the world had changed. But everything had. Why? I asked simply. He hesitated. I just think we should stay on good terms, he said. You know, after everything. After everything. The audacity almost impressed me. All right, I replied after a moment. One coffee. Relief flooded his voice instantly. Great. There's a place downtown. I'll choose the place, I interrupted gently. Silence. Then, okay. An hour later, I arrived at one of the most exclusive private lounges in the city. A place Daniel had never been invited to. A place where power didn't need to introduce itself. I was already seated when he walked in. And the moment he saw me, he froze. Not because I looked different, but because everything around me did. The environment, the service, the way people subtly acknowledged me. Evelyn, he said slowly, sitting down across from me. This place is expensive. I tilted my head slightly. Is it? He let out a small laugh, clearly uncomfortable. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know you came to places like this. Of course you didn't. You'd be surprised what you don't know about me, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. He studied me for a moment, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. You seem different, he said. I am, I replied calmly, and that was the truth. So, I continued, setting my cup down. What's going on with your business? There it was. The real reason for this meeting. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. It's probably nothing, he said. Just some investors are pulling out. I didn't react. Not even a blink. Deals are getting delayed. Contracts are stalling. It's like everything's suddenly working against me. I nodded slowly. That must be frustrating. It is, he admitted. And the weird part is, I can't figure out why. Of course you can't. Because you never knew where your success came from. You'll manage, I said, my tone neutral. He looked at me again, more carefully this time. Yeah, I will, he said, but there was less confidence now.
Good.
That was the first crack. As the conversation continued, I noticed something else. He kept glancing at me, not the way he used to. Not with love, but with curiosity, suspicion, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. You know, he said slowly. I've been thinking. That's new, I replied lightly. He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I mean it, he continued. Things were going really well before everything changed. I said nothing, just watched him. And I can't shake this feeling, he added, leaning forward slightly, that somehow it's connected. There it was. The instinct, the doubt, the beginning of realization. But he still wasn't close to the truth. Connected to what? I asked innocently. He stopped, then shook his head. I don't know. It sounds crazy.
Yes,
it does.
For now.
The meeting ended shortly after. As we stood up, he hesitated again. Evelyn, he said, his voice quieter now. Did I make a mistake? I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I once loved. The man who thought I was never enough. And for a brief second, I saw it. Regret. But regret wasn't enough anymore. I guess you'll find out, I said softly. And then I walked away. That evening, I received another report from Michael. Phase 1 was complete. And the effects? Even better than expected. I stood by the window once again, the city glowing beneath me. Daniel was starting to feel it now. The pressure. The confusion, the slow collapse of everything he believed was his. But this was still just the surface, because the real truth? He hadn't even discovered who I really was yet. And when he does, everything will change. The next morning, Daniel received an email that would force him to attend a high-level investors meeting, where I would be waiting. Daniel stared at the email for a long time. The subject line alone was enough to make his chest tighten. Mandatory emergency stakeholder meeting, Anderson Tech. He wasn't used to being summoned. He was used to being the one in control. But lately, nothing felt familiar anymore. The conference room was located on the top floor of one of the most powerful corporate towers in Seattle. A place where decisions weren't just made, they were enforced. Daniel walked in, adjusting his suit, trying to hold onto what little confidence he had left. But the moment he stepped inside, he felt it.
The shift.
The room was filled with people he didn't fully recognize. Major stakeholders, silent observers, power players. And at the head of the table was me, Evelyn Carter. He froze.
Completely.
For a second, I could see it in his eyes. Confusion. Then disbelief. Then something deeper.
Fear.
Evelyn, he said under his breath, as if saying my name would somehow change what he was seeing. I didn't smile. I didn't react. I simply met his gaze. Mr. Anderson, I said calmly, gesturing toward an empty seat. You're late. The room went silent. Because, in that moment, everyone understood something he didn't. That I wasn't just another person in the room. I was the one running it. He slowly walked to his seat, his movements stiff, uncertain. What is this? He asked, looking around. This, I replied, folding my hands on the table, is reality. Michael stepped forward, placing a series of documents in front of Daniel. Over the past few weeks, he began, multiple investment groups have withdrawn their support from Anderson Tech. Daniel flipped through the pages quickly, his breathing getting heavier. No, that's not possible, he muttered. It is, Michael continued. And as of today, the majority controlling stake has been consolidated. Daniel looked up sharply. By who? Silence filled the room. And then, I answered. By me. It hit him all at once. Every deal. Every opportunity. Every lucky break. All of it. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at me. You? He whispered. Yes, I said, my voice steady.
Me.
But how? He asked, his entire world crumbling in real time. I leaned forward just slightly. Because I was never who you thought I was. The room felt smaller now. Heavier. Like the walls themselves were closing in on him. I built that company, he said, almost desperately. I tilted my head. Did you? He had no answer. Because deep down, he finally understood. He never built anything alone. He was supported, protected, lifted, by the very person he chose to throw away. You said I wasn't on your level, I continued quietly. Every word landed heavier than the last. You said you outgrew me. His eyes dropped. I didn't know, he said weakly. And for the first time, I believed him. He really didn't know. But that didn't change anything. You're right, I said softly. That made him look up again.
Hope.
Just for a second. I'm not on your level. A pause. And then, I'm far above it. Silence. Complete silence. No anger. No shouting. Just truth. And sometimes, truth hurts more than anything else. I stood up slowly. And as I did, the entire room followed. Not for him. For me. Effective immediately, I said, my voice clear and final. You are no longer the CEO of Anderson Tech. His face went pale. You can't do that. I already did. I replied calmly. Security stepped closer. Not aggressively. Just enough to remind him. This wasn't his world anymore. As he stood there, broken, lost, and finally aware, he looked at me one last time. Evelyn, he said, his voice barely holding together. I made a mistake. I looked at him. The man I once loved. The man I once would have forgiven anything. But not anymore. Not a mistake, I said quietly. A choice. I turned and walked toward the exit. Every step steady. Every second earned. And just before I left the room, I paused. Without turning back, I said, I hope she was worth it. Outside, the city of Seattle stretched endlessly beneath the sky.
Bright. Alive.
Unstoppable.
Just like me.
I didn't destroy him overnight. I let him see it, feel it, lose it,
Piece by piece.
because revenge isn't about anger. It's about truth. And the truth was simple. He didn't lose me because I wasn't enough. He lost me because he never realized I was everything. And this time, I didn't walk away quietly. I walked away in control.